exploring the culture, the adventure, and the impact of martial arts. That's what we do at Kung Fu Podcast. I'm your host, Sifu, T.W. Smith. Thank you so much for joining me today in episode number 106. And no matter where you're listening to me, say we're out for a walk together, you're riding in your car, or wherever you have me, I hope that your martial arts practice is going well, and I appreciate you letting me be part of your martial arts program. In this episode, we're going to be following up Part 2, Looking for Secrets Within Martial Arts, and it's the essay by Kai Morgan. If you missed episode 105, you're going to need to go back to it in order to kind of pick up where we are here. But as a podcaster, I want to share something with you because it's one of the things, much like hearing from you all, that's really inspiring, is that when I take the time to try to research an essay, for example, and I get some feedback from the author, it really does make a difference. And so Kai wrote me after episode 105, and she says, "Dear Sifu Smith, I love this. Both the personal insights into your own history and martial arts journey, which you share. And then the way you've built on the ideas I wrote about after hearing Ben's lecture and made them your own. The way that you've added your own take to the idea of play, train, and study is helpful and thought-provoking. Best wishes, Kai." Well, Kai, thank you for writing in, and I would encourage any of you who's listening to go over to her blog, budo-inochi.com. That's budo-inochi.com. And check out her article. She does a really good job in bringing her unique perspective into different stories like the one I'm sharing with you now. I also got in touch with Dr. Ben Spatz, who we've referenced his book, What the Body Can Do, and let him know that we were referencing his work during these podcasts. And he wrote, "Thanks for this. I'm delighted to have the ideas in my book picked up and shared more widely." Now, one of the things I've done is I've downloaded the book, and Dr. Spatz has actually agreed to come on to an interview at some point in time, and we'll see if we can't get that set up for sometime in 2017. But in the next episode, I'm going to share with you some excerpts from the book, which after I spend some time reading, I believe that the audience of this program, some of the finest and sharpest martial artists in the world, will continue to find value in his work. I'll put a link to his work on the website that you can get to at kungfupodcast.com/106. Another addition to the Die Hard library at Kung Fu Podcast is from Agent of Action, Dr. Paul Bowman, whose book, Mythologies of Martial Arts, is now at Amazon, and you can find the link right there on the website. I'd like to remind you that you can support Kung Fu Podcast at no additional cost to yourself by using the links on the website. If you go there and you click on the Amazon link or the iTunes link and you purchase apps or books or whatever you do, the Kung Fu Podcast program will earn $1 or $2 back for anything that you purchase, and it does not cost you anything extra. You can also support the program by going to kungfupodcast.com/support or leave a review and tell a friend. Over on the website, you'll see 2 new links. One is an editorial schedule link, and the other is so that you can sign up for the newsletter. Both of these links will have information about what Kung Fu Podcast has been doing, and then also where's the program going. Now, to get us ready for Part 2, remember that Kai had written about some of the verb differences, play, train, and study, and what they meant to her and her sensei, some of her classmates, and even Dr. Spatz. We also discussed what an object of knowledge is as compared to a closed object, where basically you get what you get, where an object of knowledge is something like the martial arts, or music, or acting, where the knowledge that you initially get opens up new questions. The questions bring new solutions, and those solutions become a labyrinth of understanding, education, and application that you're going to pursue, and if it is something that you really get into, you can make a lifetime continuing to understand yourself through the process. We're going to pick up right where we left off in Kai's essay, where Dr. Spatz is talking about objects of knowledge as they unfold in front of you, never stop unfolding, and there's no such thing as a dominant force that you one day have it all. You're always in the pursuit of reaching deeper. So let's get back to Kai's essay. With something like a song or a martial arts form, You go in there, you start to learn, and you realize very quickly there's a lot more. It's not that you go in and you dominate it and it closes off and then you have it as if you've mastered it. Something new or a variation of the old always appears. Kai says when she hears this, a shiver runs down her spine. Dr. Spatz is echoing and expanding on the very ideas that her sensei tells her in the dojo, and it feels weird to sit in this neat, sweat-free university lecture hundreds of miles away from home, hearing these informally shared ideas from her sensei being re-articulated as hard, dense academic theory. Kai continues by writing, only last week, one of her sensei said enigmatically or mysteriously, "You will never master this kata. There's always more within it. But the more you practice it, the more you will change as a person. And the more you change, the more you will see in the form." On a personal note, it sounds like Kai's got some pretty good instructors there who are guiding her down a path in her martial arts. Dr. Spatz spends some time and he fleshes out this idea of the learning opening up and unfolding forever. And he says, quote, "It's a pathway in the sense of, if I do this, then this becomes possible. But if I don't do the first thing, I can't even understand what the second thing is. And most pathways are obviously wrong. That's what makes it research." End quote. Dr. Spatz continues, and he describes this studying method where, for example, you have your partner there, and whether you're working on push hands, sticky hands, or some other form of connective and adhering practice, a flow drill is a good example, and you're trying to sit there and you go, well, can we do it like this? And you go, no, that ain't going to work. Can we do it like that? No, I'm not too sure. How about this? Well, maybe that will work. And then you do one, you go, aha, this one. That's how this is working for me. And you have that feeling inside of you that you just discovered something. And how do you imagine that feeling? And Kai gives you the idea of trying to imagine an actual tree. And I'm talking about the image she puts in there is an older one that's got the long and stringy branches, some of the thick ones going off in all directions. And it's just a continuous set of expanding from the trunk. It's not like the little simple tree that you would draw in fourth grade that had little 4 branches and everything was an equal quadrant kind of thing. But you actually have to imagine if you were trying to learn this tree, how it would be to first put yourself somewhere on that tree and then try to physically work yourself through so that you understand all the other branches, how it expands from the center, and you are going through an exploration. And there's going to be so many choices and so many possibilities along the way as you're learning it. You're going to be spending your time researching, can I go this way? Should I go that way? Kai writes this about being a part of the audience at Dr. Spatz's lecture. And she says, quote, "I recognize the experience he is describing with excitement and realize that my sensei's profound experience of study may not be so far out of reach after all. Albeit we may access it on very different levels. It's a gift and a revelation to now have such clear, accurate words to break it down and describe it." End quote. She says that she's never studied Aikido in this deep sense for all of the 15 years she's trained in it, or even dreamed of the possibility existed to have that sort of knowledge. She says that she's only been exposed to this alternative approach through learning karate for a relatively short time as compared to learning Aikido, but she feels like she's coming home. The most noticeable difference is now that she can regularly practice at home, which she never did when she was practicing Aikido, and she says that she used to try sometimes, but in those days it just made no sense to her how you could train alone without a partner. But now, exploring the kata and the kihon alone is an essential supplement to the full contact elements of training in class. Kai transcribes a portion of Dr. Spatz's lecture, and she shows it to 2 of the senseis and a couple of her senior students. And she says, this was written by a drama guy who doesn't know any martial arts. Do you recognize the experience and the feeling that he's describing? And they read it carefully, and they nod approvingly. And they say, he's nailed it. One of the senseis stop and they say, when you get to a high level in any art, it's all the same. Just as he, referring to Dr. Spatz, describes it. It doesn't matter if it's martial arts, music, painting, or anything else. After the conference, Kai read Dr. Spatz's book, What a Body Can Do, and she tried to understand it more. In the book, Dr. Spatz writes about practicing technique as being a kind of research, and this research can happen on 3 different levels, and this is Kai's take on these 3 levels. And the first level comprises personal research. This is where the student is discovering things about the techniques that are probably already well known to others, but new to him or her. The second level she describes as a bit stronger, level 2, and at this level research, it involves discovering things that are relatively new to your own community of knowledge. And then there's level 3, which is the strongest level of research you can do, and this entails discovering something completely new, a pathway that had never been previously known to anyone. She says that her favorite quote from the book is this: specialized knowledge in any field is not directly accessible from the surface of everyday, commonplace knowledge. One has to find one's way into it, proceeding step by step along the paths. End quote. We all know that the fantasy of secret martial techniques is a chimera and even a joke. Yet many folks in the martial arts are still somehow drawn into the idea of arcane mysteries, even if they don't admit it openly. And here is an approach that gives us genuine secrets and wonders, as well as being free of superstition or credulity, and firmly grounded in our real and practical physical training experience. Kai says she was absolutely delighted with Dr. Spatz's presentation. They've helped her elucidate the mysteries that she's brushing up against in her own dojo, and now by putting them into words that even a karate beginner can access. She also now has the first elements of a new precise vocabulary to describe and reflect on the joy of practicing, or should that be studying kata. Until now, it's just been more of an abstract, good feeling with no name. And she finishes by writing, quote, I also feel like I have a deeper understanding of a helpful mindset with which to approach karate study and a tentative roadmap for the long journey ahead. End quote. Kai, thank you so much for letting me share this particular essay with the international audience of martial artists, some of the finest folks in the world, and you are definitely one of them. And as I look into the closing of this particular podcast, in my Kung Fu, for example, we would learn a single movement and walk and work it until we knew it well, which basically meant the same thing she would say. We were told things like, study your Kung Fu like a kid studies a brand new toy. You work it, you play with it, you try it, and you keep making it do things and exploring with it until you know everything about it. In fact, the first technique I learned in Xingyi was called Tiger Leaping from the Mountain. It was pretty much the only technique I walked for nearly a year. Then the others came very easily because you learn so much in the one that it helps you expand out into the others really quickly, but you have to know the one. You have to understand the physical and mental demands to create one true power inside yourself. I believe that as a practical martial arts instructor, you have a responsibility to try to teach your style or system in a way that you can help someone discover themselves along the way. As long as you remember that every student there has a reason for being there and that you've shared with them in a way that your objectives are in line with their objectives. And what that means is know what you're trying to practice for. If you're trying to learn practical martial arts, you may not necessarily want to be in an MMA class. Punches and kicks may be very similar, but the overall objectives are much different. Another question I wanted to pose to you as an instructor as well as a student is, where does the instructor's teaching responsibilities end and the student's responsibility to remember it, research it, test, and re-research it begin? On many occasions, my Sifu would show you something once or say something once, and at that point, his conscience was clear. You have been taught. And he may not mention or show it again for years, if at all. But if you were out there working on it one day and he saw that you picked up on what he said or what he showed you and you were trying to understand it and researching it, digging inside yourself, he would come over there and help you. But if he never saw you working on it, he would never bring it up again. As students, we would call it the sweat equity lessons. It was the lessons that you got when he saw that you were putting sweat equity into it. During her essay, Kai refers to personal research as being level 1, then she goes on to describe levels beyond that. And if you're a traditional martial artist that wants to learn and earn the right and confidences to call yourself a practical martial artist, then you're going to have the grit and perseverance to dig into the research of yourself. Also in this essay, we reference Dr. Spatz's very good book, What a Body Can Do. And on the principles of self-research, digging, effort, embodying a role, using techniques for expression, we're all on board with that. As martial artists, whether he's using it for drama and theater, it doesn't really matter. But there is one major difference between what you need in your body as a traditional martial artist as compared to what Dr. Spatz needs his body to do in theater, drama, and or in dance. He needs his body mechanics and movements to demonstrate a message, to put on a presentation, and to be graceful in his expression, and to call upon and utilize power as needed to carry out that message. However, you have to take it a galaxy leap further. You have to have all of those same components. Plus, you have to have objectives, strategy, and the ability to have a vicious intensity to overcome some uncompliant ass that is just trying to put harm on you or someone you care about. And that's where it separates quite a bit differently. Exploring the culture, the adventure, and the impact of martial arts. Thank you so much for joining me today in episode number 5. And remember, when you go out there to practice today, you're learning a form or a kata, and you are just beginning a journey. You're not ending it when you finish the last posture and you bring it to a close or to an end. And even if you're a long-time practitioner and been doing it for 15 years, I can promise you that if you apply the 3 levels of research like Kai did in her essay, and you get in there and dig and wonder if I can do this or if I can do that, can you take it a little step further and not just understand the art better, but understand yourself better in the art? I hope you have a fantastic practice, and if you'd like to support the program, go to kungfupodcast.com/support. This is Sifu T.W. Smith, and I'll be talking with you again soon.